You can't build emotional security by tightening your grip. What you're building as you tighten your grip is control, not courage. Real security is not about trying to get away from the storm or stop the storm from happening. Real security is about weathering the storm. It's about learning how to stand in it, not stop the rain. And so today I am going to be inviting you to walk through 6 different emotional security profiles within your own emotional landscape. Yes, that's right. I said it, folks. An emotional landscape. I want you to stay in the metaphor today. I've already talked to you about how emotional security is about weathering the storm instead of trying to stop the rain. So as I tell you a true story today, and as I go through these 6 very real emotional security profiles with you, I want to invite you to stay in the metaphor, imagining that you have your own island, and on your island, your world, everything that's happening in your life is a very particular emotional landscape, and it's happening all the time, whether you pay attention to it or not. Now, I have a lot of clients come into my office, and what they say to me is, Nina, I want to cut it out. This uncomfortable feeling, this discomfort that I'm feeling, I want to feel secure. So can we just cut that out? And of course, as a therapist, my answer is, I'm so sorry to tell you, we can't cut it out. The only way out is through. And so by the end of today's episode, you are going to have been invited to walk through your emotional landscape, to learn ways to weather the storm, to stop pretending that we can stop the rain, and to start learning how to find so much comfort in the discomfort that you can genuinely say, no matter where you go, that you carry security with you. Doesn't that sound nice? All right, let's launch into the story. First things first, my clients come from a vast array of backgrounds, right? Some of them are already doing very, very well in their lives, and they just want to keep doing better, but they know there's something to tweak. In the case of today's story, because I really want to walk you through all 6 emotional security profiles, and I want to walk you through from the least secure to the most secure, I'm going to give you an example of my clients, and today we're going to call it Client Harry, okay? Harry's journey from emotionally unavailable to emotionally secure. Now, Harry is successful in life at the beginning of this story. Harry has money. Harry has merit. Harry has success. Harry has a beautiful family. Do you know what Harry does not have? Harry does not have genuine security at his core. What Harry ends up hiding at the beginning of this story is a significant addiction to drugs, to alcohol. And how Harry ends up in front of me is through an addiction treatment center, struggling with his mental health and his well-being. And he's trying to figure out, why, Nina? Why is it that I found myself here? I had everything. What's wrong with me? Why can't I figure out how to feel fulfilled, how to feel genuinely secure at my core when I have all of these things? Why can't I do it? And the simplest answer for all my human beings out there who struggle in this part, when you have hit rock bottom like this, the simplest answer is because somewhere along the way of your journey toward merit, money, and success, somewhere along the way toward you trying to live the best life possible, genuine security was not built at the core. And somewhere along the way, performance stepped in. So now you are performing as if you feel fulfilled in every category of your life instead of being genuinely fulfilled in your emotional landscape. And so I meet Harry in this treatment center, and Harry comes and originally was emotionally unavailable before this, emotionally unavailable, completely denied that there was an issue. But once started to consider maybe treatment was an option, became emotionally aware. We go from emotionally unavailable, the world is the problem, I'm not the problem, right? I don't cause this, it's the world, to emotionally aware. Maybe there's something I could be doing differently. Thanks, Harry. And as Harry continues to do this work, becomes not just emotionally aware that there are other ways of doing things, that there are merely skills. Harry's not broken. Harry needs new skills and new perspectives to be able to move through his own emotional landscape, because without those folks, he's not emotionally fit enough to withstand the pressure. And so Harry begins to not just become, again, emotionally aware, but emotionally literate, which, just in case you're taking notes out there, is the third. The first is emotionally unavailable. The second is emotionally aware. And the third profile is emotionally literate. You're now learning language and what it is you're feeling, what other people are feeling. You're learning in your own body what it looks like, what it shows up as when you're feeling insecure about something. I'm going to pause here and briefly describe insecure, because as we talk about emotional security, insecure is not how you are defined as a person. You can be secure in many things. But when we talk about emotional insecurity here, what we're talking about is the recognition that there is a difference between the way you feel on the inside and what you see happening on the outside. There is a difference there, and you feel discomfort at the difference. Oftentimes it is between you and another human being, but sometimes it's you in a situation, right? But insecurity, quite simply, is when you recognize a difference between you and something else, and there is such a discomfort there that you've got to either wrangle with it and figure out how you can move through this emotional landscape, or what ends up happening is you start to find something to numb and avoid because it is that uncomfortable. Sometimes it's not even your fault. You don't have the skills. You don't have the perspective. But here we are in this episode, and I've already walked you through 3 emotionally unavailable, emotionally aware, and emotionally literate, 3 different profiles in which you may already say, oh, you know what, Nina, that kind of sounds like me. But I'm going to keep going now that we understand. And I hope you took a note in your notebook, folks, for what emotionally insecure looks like, right? What insecurity looks like. I'm going to keep going because Harry continues to do this work, learns what it looks like in himself, then starts to be able to apply that to his friendships, his working relationships, his partnership, his family life. Harry moves from emotionally literate to emotionally available. Harry's now able to speak about what he's feeling. He's able to share it. He's able to have conversations around it, but struggles still with how to go deeper. But Harry doesn't stop at emotionally available. Now, a lot of my clients, they'll say, you know what? Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough. Most of them will go on at this point to say, no, you said there's a little bit more. Okay. Okay. You said it's about skills. You said it's about perspectives. You said it's about relationships. At this point, once you reach emotional availability, it's not just about skills and perspectives. It's about the relationships you're building. You're building emotional wealth at this point, not just emotional fitness. And so once you've got emotional availability, you keep going, you go a little deeper, and now you can be emotionally vulnerable. You intentionally ask deeper questions to go deeper in relationship with yourself, with your partner, with your work, friendships, relationships, with your children, with whatever relationships you choose, because you know you are ready to level up. You have reached that point in your emotional security. And this is from why? Not magic, folks. It's because you've done the emotional work to get to where you intended to get to. Emotionally vulnerable is not where it ends. Not only can you go deeper here, if you do a little bit more work, just like Harry did, started bringing his wife into sessions, started doing work specifically with his child, what ended up happening here? An emotionally secure man developed, folks. Emotionally secure, meaning no longer did Harry feel the need to invalidate himself or others in order to find comfort in the discomfort. Harry had spent the time to build up his emotional fitness in the first 3 profiles. And he added on emotional wealth in the last 3 profiles, which is what gave him emotional security over time. Now, I don't know if you just caught that, but we have this fantastic equation, and I do want you to write this down and click save on this, folks. Emotional fitness plus emotional wealth is what equals emotional security. And I think that is super critical that you take this now. Understand, it is not magic. I can't tell you how many men will never walk into my office because the thing that they are saying to themselves is, It's not going to work for me. I mean, that may work for that guy, but it's not going to work for me. Or I don't have a problem. It's the rest of the world. Listen, if it's about skills and perspective, just to start, can you gain new skills? Can you gain new perspective? Are you willing to lean into your edge and traverse your own emotional landscape? And I can tell you, most of you are going to say, that sounds kind of frightening, Nina. Sounds a little uncomfortable. I bet you it is. I know from my work that it can be uncomfortable, right? I also know that it's going to be the only way that you're going to find genuine freedom by stopping trying to control how you feel and how everyone else around you feels, and instead trying to level up and actually develop the courage to feel through the moment. Lean into your edge, feel through that moment, and get to the next cliff, right? The next mountain where you get to level up. Now, Harry did not say this at the very beginning, right? We heard what Harry said at the beginning of his journey, but by the end of his journey, Harry's quotes is one of my favorite. He comes into my office and he says to me, Nina, I have other men coming to me for advice on how I should handle things now because I look so confident and so secure on the outside. And I got to tell you, Nina, I feel that way on the inside. But if you told me a year ago that I would have other men coming to me for this, I would have told you you were full of shit. It's my most favorite quote from a client to date. In this particular situation, right? I actually got to see the client move the full spectrum. I don't always get to see that. But in the case of Harry, I did. And what an honor to watch the journey, to witness the journey, and to walk the journey alongside him, right? He's making all the choices. He's the one who has to gain the skills, and he gets to choose which skills he gains and actually utilizes, right? He gets to choose how to level up in his world. But what an honor to be able to walk that. Now, I've told you the story in a nutshell and how the transformation can look, right? And of course, it looks different for everyone. But at this point in the episode, I always want you to try to put yourself in the shoes at some point of the story. Do you fit into this story at some point? Does somebody you know fit into the story at some point? Take a minute and really try to gain that perspective in this moment. What is standing out and rings true to you? Quick break for a sec. If Empowered Human is offering you something valuable about courage, healing, belonging, or love at your core, you may want to work with me. In particular, if you know of or identify as a high achieving man, and I say this quite seriously because if you don't, I'm going to drive you up a friggin' wall. High achiever that is leveled up in every arena except your relationship with yourself or your relationships with others. Visit empoweredhuman.love for more on how you can level up in your relationships with one of our Empowered Human intensives. Intensives understand the value of your time. Of the 3 that I offer, Walk into Courage covers a month's worth of weekly sessions in just 2 hours. Dive into Courage is a 3-day intensive that can cover up to 6 months worth of sessions. And Ascend into Courage is a year-long program to give you the skills and the network you need to level up for lifelong emotional security. When it comes to leveling up in your relationships, I got you. Head to empoweredhuman.love for more. But for now, back to the episode. So at this point, I'd love for us to lean in and get a little psychoeducation, get a little perspective of our own in here, right? I invited you to stay in the metaphor, in the landscape, right? And I'm going to take that up a notch. I'm going to go back over the 6 profiles here, and then I'm also going to liken it to what it looks like in the emotional landscape. And I'm going to tell you what flags to look out for in the event that you might actually be numbing or masking, right? Hiding parts of yourself, which is actually going to limit you and stop you from traversing that landscape, which means, guess what, folks? You can't make it to that next mountain. If you're afraid to traverse this one, how on earth do you make it to the next? And so, if you're ready to loosen up your grip just a little bit, yes, just for the next 5 minutes or so, yeah? Loosen up your grip a little bit. Try not to control how the end of this episode goes for yourself. Try to gain some courage here. Yeah? Here we go. So, first, I invited you at the very beginning to weather the storm, try not to stop the rain. But the challenge for an emotionally unavailable individual, right? The least secure that we can be. And again, this is to emotional discomfort. An emotionally unavailable person avoids the storm. Now, there are usually reasons for this. It's probably what they were taught, it's how they were raised, it's their conditioning, right? But they avoid the storm come hell or high water. They'll even say that the storm is not happening. They could even be yelling at you and say, I'm not angry. They avoid the storm. Masking this could look like sarcasm, could look like dominance, could look like dominance, excuse me, dismissing your feelings, right? Or their own feelings, most certainly. Numbing can look like overwork, focusing on sex or women or substances or silence. They shut down, okay? All of these could be flags on the emotional landscape for emotional unavailability. If anything stands out to you, I want you to take note of that before I move into the next category, okay? Stage two, or profile two, because sometimes it's not linear, folks, is emotional awareness. Now, here you're like, huh, you know what? The weather changes. And some people, man, they just recognize that the weather changes. Like that's a natural part of life. It sure is, folks. Emotionally aware people have started to recognize this. Masking here sometimes looks like overthinking, overanalyzing. They're really stuck in their head trying to figure out what's going on here, right? They don't have a language for it yet. Numbing this could look like, oh, I'm going to stay busy. Maybe I'm going to, overthink. I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep myself busy so I don't have to think, right? This is what an emotionally aware individual might find themselves doing. Okay. If anything that I just shared sounds like you, take note of it before I move on to profile three. Emotionally literate. Emotionally literate individuals have learned the language of the elements, so to speak. All right. They know when the clouds are coming. They recognize that rain is inevitable. Hey, so is sunshine, right? They've learned the language of the elements and with the emotions that correlate to that, right? I'm feeling angry right now. This is how anger shows up in my body with tension, with heat in my cheeks. I'm feeling sad. You know how I know I'm feeling sad? Because my voice tends to drop and then I start to look inward and my gaze starts to fall downward. I'm feeling fill in the blank. They've learned a language for this now. It doesn't mean that it's comfortable for them to talk about it. It doesn't mean they're opening up all the time. But by the time you reach emotional literacy, you have learned a language. It is a little bit more comfortable to recognize it. Yeah. Masking on here could look like, analyzing again. Instead, you get an analysis paralysis. What's going to happen? What's going to happen here? Numbing could look like perfectionism, right? Okay, well, if I just be really rigid and now I'm going to tell you exactly what it is I'm feeling all the time, and this is what I'm feeling, and I can't get out of that, right? And you get a little bit rigid with it sometimes. Take a breath, yeah? There are skills that we learn in how to recognize what's going on in the body and how to get you grounded. I often work with my clients on what we call a grounding protocol. If anything I have said up to this point sounds familiar to you, I invite you to write it down. Grounding protocol, that sounds like me. I could use one of those for when I'm tapped out and I feel out of body. Dissociation is another flag for emotional literacy or anything up to this point, right? You disconnect from the moment because it's overwhelming. You haven't quite yet learned how to ground yourself, okay? That those first three profiles is your emotional fitness skills. That's what has to level up, okay? Emotional fitness, that's where we are in the equation. But then we add emotional wealth, which is the next three categories, yes? Emotional wealth begins with profile number four, emotional availability. Now, emotionally available people take responsibility for their emotions. Yes, they do. They're transparent about the challenges. They like to be that, or they're trying to be that, right? But they take responsibility. They say, ooh, okay, well, this is what I did. They're also going to want you to take responsibility, right? Um, excuse me, and they stop or are trying to practice stopping, trying to manage everyone else's emotions, right? They're saying, man, I'm really trying to take responsibility here, which means I need to learn how to not take responsibility or project, right? Which is putting, well, you're the one who did this and blaming other people. Yeah, we don't want to do that in emotionally available. So you're practicing and learning to catch yourself when you're blaming or guilting somebody else, instead, taking ownership and taking responsibility, right? We use I statements a lot here. What this could look like is if you're masking, excuse me, in this part, if you're masking an emotional availability, could look like still trying to control. right? Overly try to control yourself with rigidity or controlling others, right? Well, if you just do this, then you'll be more emotionally available, right? Trying to control their journey instead of taking that breath and turning that mirror inward. Wait a minute, I'm practicing emotional availability. That means I really need to be looking at myself and taking responsibility. Okay. Numbing could look like distracting yourself, doing different things again, right? You see, there's some common themes here for when we are tapped out of the work. Okay. Learn what it looks like for you. Learn what it looks like for you. That's the most important piece in your emotional landscape is learning and recognizing what's showing up for you as the unique individual that you are. So we keep going. Profile number 5, right? Emotionally vulnerable. At this point, you're saying, I want to go deeper here and recognize that storms are inevitable, that storms happen for myself and others. And I'm going to let others see when I am storming. Now, ideally, by emotional availability, you're at least acknowledging that there's a storm, but by vulnerability, you're really saying to the people you care about, I need to let you know that I am storming right now. I want to share this with you. I might need to ask for shelter. Or I don't know how to keep you safe from my storm right now. I need to shelter myself until I know that it's safe for you. That is an emotionally vulnerable individual. That's what it looks like on their emotional landscape, folks. Some masking and numbing can happen here if we look at humor, or I'm being passive aggressive, or I am being really aloof about things as I try to be vulnerable with you. Yeah, this kind of matters to me, but I don't know, is people just lose their shit sometimes. Okay, right. These are examples of what it could look like. On the flip side of that, if you're not being aloof and goofy and whatnot about it, is it could look like withdrawing, right, during conflict because you're scared that you might be too much, is most often the case. By the time you're vulnerable, what you're really looking to do is set boundaries for yourself and the other person. Boundary setting becomes critically important with vulnerability because now you're ready to share the storm. But if you're not ready to set a boundary on it, damage could happen, right? Then you could be running into more dangerous parts of the storm than you even needed to explore. And so there's a lot of discernment that happens by the time you get to emotional vulnerability. Yeah. Not magic, folks. This is skilled work, and we're leveling up as we go through. Finally, to get to profile number 6, which is emotional security. In emotional security, you are trusting yourself because you know that you can handle any weather. You know the weather changes, it's inevitable. You don't try to stop the rain. You're emotionally secure. You say, man, you know what? I've got lots of different things that I can wear in this weather. I know how to weather this storm. If I don't know in this moment or don't have the resources, I know how to get resourced. I'm going to reach out to this person or do this thing so that I can be resourced enough to weather this storm. You hold ground and space, and not just for yourself, you're able to do it for others by this point. It's a very empowered space to be, right? Um, I love the quote and the image of now imagining that, of course, you're able to traverse this mountain and the next mountain because you are the mountain. There was a fantastic quote from those of us who remember Mulan, one of my favorites. But the quote goes like this, and I hope I don't butcher it right now as I improv this live on the podcast. No matter how the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it. Put that in your notes. No matter how the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it. And by this point, folks, it's not about tightening up your grip, right? The mountain isn't about control. The mountain simply is. By this point, you have grounded courage. You have an ability to weather the storm because you have built that ability. It is not magic. And I hope that you see by this point that the goal is not to get rid of discomfort. We can't stop the inevitable storms. The goal is to help get you so confident, so secure, so resourced at your core that you can weather the storm no matter the weather. So, with that said, I love to offer an adventure challenge for my lovely listeners out there. Your adventure challenge this week, first off, take note of anything in this episode that has been golden for you. Take it, write it down, run with it this week. If you're not sure, put it on the shelf and think about it. And if something didn't work for you, just throw it in the trash and light it on fire. I'll be okay, right? I offer you the best of what I can from both my personal and professional life. And I certainly hope that this episode has been helpful to you. But I did mention the adventure challenge, and here it is. we have an emotional security quiz. I would love for you to go take it. And in fact, I dare you at this point. You know what the 6 profiles are. You know you've been invited to traverse your emotional landscape. I dare you to go take the quiz and figure out where it says you might be in which profile. And if you're like, Nina, I already know this profile. Well, guess what? When you take the quiz, it is going to walk you through the territory, just like you did in this episode, right? It's going to walk you through very particular scenarios, though, so it'll be more personalized for you. And not only is it going to walk you through that, when you get your final results, it's going to tell you the next 3 steps that I recommend for any human being that would like to move from one profile to the next. Okay. Super simple. It takes maybe 10 minutes. If you're out there and you get to the first question, the first genuine question, like some of my clients do, and they're like, Nina, and then I freaked out. I thought I had it, but then I freaked out. Take a breath, step away, come back to it. Do 10 jumping jacks is what I tell for some of my clients. Do 10 jumping jacks, then come back to it. Why? Why would we want you to do that? Because it sounds like your emotions ticked up for a second. You felt overwhelmed. And what I want you to do is funnel that energy out, get it out of your body so that your main brain can come back online and you can hit that quiz again. If it seems really, really challenging, get somebody you care about, someone you trust to sit down with you and take the quiz with you. Help yourself, right? To get through this. This is a no judgment space. I got you. But that is your adventure challenge for this week. Between this Wednesday, today, when this episode goes out, and next Wednesday, when the next episode goes out, that's your adventure challenge. Because for the next 6 episodes, guess what we're focusing on? Each episode is going to focus on diving a little deeper into the specific profiles. Okay. If you haven't noticed, this is a huge part of the empowered human life. When we talk about, courage, healing, and belonging, your emotional security is what sets it all off. It's what sets the tone for your journey as an individual, in your life, in love, and in leadership. And so that is your adventure challenge. I hope that this has been helpful. Good luck this week, folks, and I will see you in the next episode. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.